Okay. Thank you all for coming. And does anybody have any questions, comments you want to make about anything that we've talked about thus far? Okay, good. So we start with the opening prayers, the altruistic motivation. I'll tell you what, Tom, would you mind leading us tonight?
Sure. The altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path, liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, as swiftly I will establish them the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dong la dong war jpe dra no par jpe ge. Darpa dang tam chen ken pe bar du cho par te tam che ki so je pe. Ma nam ka dang yam pe sam chen tam che de wa dang de. Dung yao dang zhuo nir du la na me pa yang dang par zok pe chang chu rim po che tho par ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De che du sang ma ge ki bar du lu gang isum ge wala ko. Ashe bar du lu gang isum ge wala ko. Tu de ring ne sung te ni ma sang da sam gi bar du lu gang isum ge wala ko. We take refuge in the kind root lama and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities among all the hilams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Daka, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root lama and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities and mandala yadams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Daka, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Trin chen sa wa dang gyur par che pe pal nen lama dam pa nam la ka su chi o. Ye dam pyo korgi lak shong nam la ka su chi o. Sang je chom den de nam la ka su chi o. Dam pe cho nam la ka su chi o. Pak pe jen dung nam la ka su chi o. Pa wo kan dro cho yok sung me song ye shi ke chen dang den pa nam la ka su chi o. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Changchu Nying Por Chi Ki Bor Sangye Nam La Kasu Chi Chodang Changchu Senpei Yi Shobla Yang De Shin Kayo Suchi Jitar Gonggi De Sheki Changchu Dung Yi Ke Padang Changchu Senpei La Pala Dedang Rimshin Ne Pata Deshin Drola Pendang Du Changchu Semni Ki Deshin Duni La Pala Rimpar Shindu La Par Gio. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chong Nam La Changchu Bardu Dangi Kasupchi Dangi Jinso Jipe Sonam Ki Drola Penchur Samge Trupar Sho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachments and aversions. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachments and aversions. Manam kadang yam pe sam chen tam che de wadang de we gyurdang den por jur shi. Dunya gi yu dang dra war jur shi. Dunya me pe de wadang mi dra war jur shi. Ye ring chak dang ye dang dra wei tang yom la ne par jur shi.
Very good. Thank you very much, Tom. So welcome, Alex. How are you? Good to see that you're with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
Okay, very good. So we're talking tonight about the 12 links of interdependent origination, or the chain of conditioned arising, or dependent origination. There's many ways of expressing this particular teaching. This was one of the most important teachings that the Buddha gave in his early years, and continued throughout his teaching time. And it was aimed at the Hinayana, was aimed at the group of people who needed the fundamentals, the discipline, because on this teaching, along with the Four Noble Truths, many things had to be established as fundamentals, and this is one of the fundamental teachings. Another one of the fundamental teachings was karma. And karma is a natural law, much in the same way that we think of the physical laws like gravity and electromagnetics and the weak force and the strong force, which are the atomic forces, the nuclear forces, and so on. And so, in the spiritual way, we look at karma as being a natural law. And the 12 links of interdependent origination is another one of those natural laws. The more that we recognize it, the more that we study and understand the 12 links, the more that we understand that this is the way in which things happen for beings on this planet. You know, we can't speak to other planets. We can't speak to other beings besides us, and particular human beings. But it works for us. So, and it follows this indisputable law of the way it operates. And this is through many, many, many generations, centuries, etc., of observation of this. So just as scientists, physicists, or whatever may look at the physical sciences and say, oh, well, these are laws of nature. Well, this is a law of human nature. These are laws of human nature. So with that in mind, look at this very seriously and consider this, and you'll come back to this many times. Gary and I were just talking a few minutes ago about how the Jewel Ornament of Liberation is such a fundamental book and has so many wisdoms within it. And it is an expression of so much of what the Buddha taught and what the masters who came after the Buddha began to assimilate into their teachings and so on, and began to be taught. So the Jewel Ornament of Liberation was a conglomeration of many different teachings that were in the oral tradition, and this was the first time that they all came together in a book that could be studied by many different people. So that's important to remember as well. I sent a link to be able to download, if you're interested, the King of Samadhi Sutra in its complete form, as it has been translated by the 84,000.com people. And but that's very thick and very heavy and so on. However, there is a really wonderful book that is a commentary by Trenggu Rinpoche from the Karma Kagyu tradition, and his commentary on it is very sharp and concise and clear, and very excellent. And so I recommend it if you want to take time to download that and to read that, or if you can order the book online or something, you should do that, because it's from that teaching. It's one of the fundamental teachings that the Buddha gave over and over again, and so many of the other teachings came out of the King of Samadhi. And Samadhi, of course, is the meditative mind, is the practice we go of meditation. So, and it's from the meditation that we experience all these things. Otherwise, it's just words coming in and going out. But when we begin to experience all these different teachings, then we realize the reality of our being Buddha. So I encourage everybody to do that. So, talking about the 12 links. So first, let me put this on the screen share. So we talked about this last week, and I want to remind you that there's many different ways of expressing these 12 links of the chain of conditioned arising. Last week, I tried to give you a very straightforward, empirical way of looking at this, based on this and based on the pictures that we saw that were on the wheel of existence. So these are the 12 links, and these 12 links are all interconnected with each other. We show it in a sequence here, which helps us to be able to understand it. But at the same time, they are all interlinked with each other. So those 12 circles would be all interlinked, and at some point, they all come together. Other points, the 2 and 3 are together, and 4 and 5 are together, and so on like that. And that's useful to be able to understand, and we're going to break it down for you a little bit more tonight. We're going to use the Jewel Ornament of Liberation's elucidation on the 12 links of interdependent origination tonight. So we're going to be talking about pages in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, pages 225, 226, 227, and 228 specifically. And what this is doing is articulating the first of the links, which is ignorance, and being able to show us how we educate ourselves into that which we wouldn't normally know. We wouldn't know maybe on our own. And so we don't know what we don't know. So this is a means by which we can begin to recognize what it is to be a human being and to have consciousness and to be able to put this into a progression of understanding. So if you have comments, as I always say, please don't hesitate to turn on your microphone and come in and talk. It may sound a little bit abstract in the beginning, but the more that we do this, the more that we engage in this study, the more sense it makes. And it's more than just a study. It becomes a contemplation and a meditation. You know, if you sit down and you're going to do your opening prayers, you're going to get yourself ready to do a practice. And if your practice becomes a study like this, that you read something, and then you allow yourself to contemplate the meaning of it, and you go through the permutations of how this affects you, how you've seen it affect other people, what the Buddha is trying to say, what other masters have said about this, and so on. And then you kind of exhaust all that academic investigation. And then you just rest your mind, you rest your intellect in that, and then you begin to have a meditation with it. You begin to have an experience with it. So I encourage you to make time to do that. And this is how we become the embodiment of the Dharma through doing these practices in this way, doing these studies in this way. So this is a case in point about understanding ignorance. So if we look at, let me see. Excuse me one second. Okay, so here I made a copy and I will put this in the chat for everybody. I guess maybe I should do that first. Give me a second. Chat. And then I want to put my computer. Okay, so I dropped this this PDF into the chat so you can open it up. I'm going to screen share it with you so we can follow it as we go along. But I'm not going to read all of this, but I just want to familiarize yourself with this. This is page 225 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. So it says, for those who have more ignorance should contemplate the law of interdependent origination as a remedy. So when ignorance is something that we all suffer from, and that to contemplate this law of interdependent origination will help to illuminate us into wisdom. So this comes from the Rice Seedling Sutra. This was a teaching by the Buddha. So it says, monks, he who understands this rice stalk can understand the meaning of interdependent origination. Those who know interdependent origination know the Dharma. Those who know the Dharma know the Buddha. So it then says the interdependence of samsara is explained in order, and the interdependence of nirvana is explained in reverse order. So what this means is we see that there is an approach, that we are approaching this wisdom in one direction as samsaric beings, but then we can recognize this in reverse order to understand nirvana. So it's taking it apart and putting it back together again, both in the approach from the bottom up and from the top down. So those are abstract ideas, thoughts to think about that. But I think if you write that down and you investigate that, let that sink in, it'll mean something more to you. In a limited time like this, I'm not going to take the time. We don't have the time to go into all this individual reference kind of stuff. So here it says in the this interdependence with cause, and the interdependence supported by conditions. So with cause is within ourself, and the conditions are external to ourselves. So it says, monks, because of this, that is produced. Because of this produced, that is born. This way, by the condition of ignorance, mental formations arise. By the condition of birth, there occur old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, suffering, unhappiness, and distress. Therefore, in this way, this vast aggregate of suffering appears. This is explained according to the desire realm and according to the birth from a mother's womb. So this is precisely the human experience, that we are the vessels. We are the proper vessels. This is what this teaching is aimed at, is ordinary human beings to slowly approach the enlightenment by understanding this all bit by bit. So these 12 links that we've talked about so far, so let me see here. So these 12 links now, ignorance, impulses, formations, and another way of expressing that would be habitual tendencies, number 2. And 3 is consciousness, 4 is mental and physical, 5, sense object realms, 6 is contact, 7 is sensation, 8 is craving, 9 is clinging, 10 is becoming, 11 is birth, and 12 is old age and death. So we're going to break this down in different groups. So at the first, number 1, at the very first, there is ignorance, which is the confusion that misunderstands all knowledge. There is ignorance, which is the confusion that misunderstands all knowledge. So when we are born, we're a clean slate. We don't understand anything. And we have to piece all this together. It's like that 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that we've talked about from time to time. So we have to put this all together. So Our goal is to be able to make sense out of this and recognize who we are as a human being, and to assemble this knowledge, this ordinary knowledge, which then brings us to the point of being able to say, well, what is mind? What is my mind? What is it? What is that which we can't see as a human being? What is that? So this is the study of that, to be able to understand mind. So first we start off with ignorance. Then, under the influence of ignorance is created the mental formations of the karma, of afflicted virtues and non-virtues. This is called the mental formation conditioned by ignorance. So these are the habitual tendencies. These are the mental formations that we agree upon, that we use to understand our physical bodies, our intellectual mind, and that stuff that is external to us, so that is around us and so on. And this is what our parents are teaching us, what we're learning from our brothers and sisters and so on. And it's the seeds that are coming from our prior lives that are taking place. So the conditions are all these things. The causes are these seeds that we have to be born again. If we didn't have these seeds of the cause to be born, that would imply that what we are Buddhas, and there's no need to be born again. But because we're not ready, we haven't allowed ourselves the freedom to be able to remain in that state, for lack of a better word, that we want to have another body, we want to have another life. So we manifest again. And so those seeds that we're bringing with us, those karmic seeds, now have to become germinated, become refreshed, and take root, and begin to blossom and so on like that. So it's through that we're understanding our past lives, seeing what our habitual tendencies are, what these formations are, these things that we seem to have in our minds, these things that we seem to be able to have gifts of, talents of, and so on. Things that we may understand without having to work too hard for it. You know, somebody who sees a piano, sits down at the piano and starts playing. You know, that's like a gift of karmic seeds. So then the next is number 3, is the seed of that karma is carried by the mind, so that it is called consciousness conditioned by mental formation. Consciousness conditioned by mental formation. So if we go back to this, so here is consciousness, number 3. So mental formations was number 2. Ignorance, mental formations, consciousness here. The seed of that karma is carried by the mind, so that it is called consciousness conditioned by mental formation. So the things that we recognize within ourselves, we see within ourselves, the things that we see outside of ourselves, these are the mental formations that we're bringing together. So this is kind of like the basic elements of our architecture of building our life. So an architect, when an architect is building a building, he's thinking about the materials he's going to use. He's thinking about the land that the building is going to be on, and so on. And he's using the knowledge of what it takes to be able to make things come together and how they will stay together and not fall apart. An architect will think of that. So all these individual things need to be considered before you can start putting them all together. So that's what these mental formations are that we're going through as a human being. The next one is the power of that karma. The mind is fully confused, enters into a mother's womb and an embryo and so forth, this is called name and form, conditioned by consciousness. So we go back to this. So this is mental and physical. So we're seeing that what's happening here is that our spiritual is coming together with our mental, with our intellectual, and with our physical. We're seeing this all come together in the womb. So we talk about this in the Bardo Todal in the way that this all comes together and we do this symbolically. It doesn't, how literally it happens is something that we really don't know. But as human beings, we try and devise this system to help us to understand how this happens. So this number 4, the power of that karma, which is those karmic seeds, the mind is fully confused. By the power of that karma, the mind is fully confused. We don't understand what's going on. Enters into a mother's womb and an embryo and so forth. That is called name and form, conditioned by consciousness. So we start putting things together. We're putting it together here as an embryo. So we don't know how this happens when we are pure spirit. We're not recognizing that this is what's happening. We're not seeing this happening. It is a miraculous birth. We've seen that times. We said that we're born of the womb. We're born of the egg. We're born of the heat and moisture, and we're born of a miraculous birth. So this miraculous birth can be looked at as being in any one of these ways, as in a womb birth, in a miraculous, in a egg birth, in a heat and moisture birth. How this all happens is miraculous to us. So just hold that in your mind somewhere. Okay, so now number 5 is, by developing the name and form, all the senses of the eye, ear, and nose, and so forth are completed. By developing the name and form, all the senses of the eye, ear, and so forth are completed. This is called the 6 increasing fields conditioned by name and form. So this is when we're born. Now all these things start coming together. Our eyes start working, our hearing starts working, our taste buds and our nose, our sense of smell starts working, our sense of touch starts working, and our brain starts working, our consciousness starts working to the degree of being able to take this stuff in and beginning to just have a place where it lands. So, the eyeballs are just a device that just sees things. But what is it that sees? The thing that it sees, where it imprints, is the brain, is in that physical part of the brain that recognizes these things. It's trying to make sense out of it, but at this point right now, it's like trying to name things. It's trying to identify things as those building blocks that I was talking about. So by developing the name and form, all the senses of the eye, ear, and so forth are completed. This is called the 6 increasing fields conditioned by name and form. So conditioned by name and form. So we ourselves, as we are born in this, we say to our mother and father, "What's that?" And during the time that we're 2 years old, 3 years old, if you remember yourself, or you have children, or you have family, with your kids, and 2-year-old kids and 3-year-old kids are always going, "What's that? What's that? What's this? What's this? Why? And they're trying to name all these different forms. They're trying to understand how all this stuff works and so on. So this is common sense. When you recognize this, when you see this, this is the natural law and the way that this takes place. And it takes place in a human being because in the animal realm, for instance, it's not articulated. They can't communicate in that way. They talk about, they communicate danger, they communicate food, they communicate some very basic emotions, but they're not intellectually, identifying all these forms and so on. This is a human experience. So now number 6 is the interaction of the eye organ and so forth, the corresponding object, and the consciousness is called contact, conditioned by the 6 increasing fields. So this again is where the mind is processing this and is recognizing the our contact with it, that it becomes part of our life. It becomes, and at this point, it may be indistinguishable between what is internal and what is external. We haven't gotten to the degree of sophistication where we can separate those two. We're still an infant in this way, thinking of ourselves as an infant. So we're coming into contact with these things. Our senses are working, our sense organs are working, these imprints are working in the brain, the contact is coming together and so on, and we're beginning to process this. So number 7 is through contact, one experiences the feelings of joy, suffering, or indifference. This is called feeling conditioned by contact. So this is sensation. When we talk about, so going back to this, here are these different spheres. So we talked about the sense objects, the contact. Now we're talking about the sphere of sensation, this link of sensation, and being able to process that. So whether it's internal or external, again, we haven't gotten to the sophisticated part of that, of understanding that yet as an infant. But at the same time, we're aware of the sensations. We're aware of our mother coming and stroking us, or our mother giving us a bath, our mother, changing us when we're wet or anything like that, when we're hungry, feeding us, that kind of thing. Or that when we go outside, let's say, we're out of our room, we go outside and we feel the warmth of the sun for the first time, or we feel the wind blowing against our skin. We begin to feel that and so on. So we're coming into contact with all these internal and external things. And maybe some of the internal things can be thoughts that are being developed by when we are hungry and we cry out, that we get a reaction from our parents. We get a reaction from those who come to find out what's wrong with us. Are we wet? Are we hungry? Are we too cold? Are we too hot? Something like that. So we're coming in contact with our being able to elaborate on these sensations, to be able to bring others, to make them aware of what our sensations are. So the number 8, when there is a feeling, there is a joy, or through contact one experience. I'm going back to number 7. Through contact one experiences the feelings of joy, suffering, or indifference. This is called being conditioned by contact. So these are the feelings that we get when our parents come, our brothers and sisters come. When there is a feeling, there is joy, attachment, and stronger attachment. This is called craving conditioned by feeling. So this is when now the cravings, number 8, when we may be craving the attention. We may be satisfied with our hunger, but we are craving more than just our hunger. We're craving the intention. In other words, we want our mother, we want our father, we want our caregivers to come and spend more time with us. You know, we're feeling lonely. Our ego is acting out and saying, "Oh, I want your attention." So it uses these feelings that's being expressed through our noises that we make and so on, and realizing those things, our communication devices and so on, and we're seeing the craving now, craving attention, craving more food, craving warmth, craving cold or something like that. But this craving is more of a grasping. You know, we want this and we want to hold it. We want more of it, this attention. So there's a lot of nuance to this. And this is why this has to be contemplated upon. You know, I'm not being the best articulator in all of this, you know, but I'm hopeful that what I'm doing is leading you to the contemplation of your own contemplation, to be able to think about this and think about all the nuance of what it is that you have experienced, and seeing the way that you do it now, seeing the way that we did it as infants and as children and so on, but to see how we do it now, because we still continue, because this is the human process. This is the way the mind works. This is all around the mind. This is around what it is to be a human being. Remember, this was the circumference, the circle that was around the wheel of existence. And the wheel of existence were these 6 human realms that were constantly shifting through all the time. It's a state of flux that we're moving through these and so on. So this outer wheel that we're talking about now, these links of interdependent origination, are the very subtle ways in which our mind is apprehending all of this, is recognizing all this and dealing with all of this. That sounds very abstract to me, but that's what it is. So number 9 now. So let me go. Number 8 was, when there is feeling, there is joy, attachment, and stronger attachment. This is called craving conditioned by feeling. Now, number 9, from that attachment, one craves more and more and wishes to not be separated from the object of attachment. This is called grasping conditioned by craving, or in other words, clinging. So if you look at our chart, this chart here, number 9 is clinging. So we're craving and then we're clinging. So you've seen this, you know, a 2-year-old kid or a 1-year-old kid or something like that, and he's got a toy and he doesn't want to give the toy up and he doesn't want to share it. And if you try and take it away from him, he's going to fly into some kind of, you know, expression of despair, you know, wanting his toy back because he's clinging on to it so much. But we do that with our personalities. We do that the way we live. We do that the way we work. We do that with our relationships and so on. So we cling in the same way. We grasp and then we cling to these things. It satisfies the ego. The ego is our protective device, is our survival technique. I can't be without this toy. I can't be without this job. So 9 was, this is called grasping conditioned by craving or clinging. The number 10 is through that grasping, through the karma and existence by body, speech, and mind are again created. This is called existence conditioned by grasping. So this is number 10. This is becoming. This is who I am. I am becoming an entity. I am becoming a being. I'm someone who has identity. I'm becoming important to myself. I'm becoming important to others. And I'm developing this whole persona, this whole personality thing is being developed and so on through this karma and through, how was it expressed? Through this grasping, this grasping onto things, through the karma that is being developed, the karma that was developed that are the causes for my being, and then the new karma that I'm developing now, and then and the existence of my body, speech, and mind. So the very presence of who I am now is developing the awareness of this becoming. Then number 11 here is that karma creates 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas. This is called birth conditioned by existence. Birth conditioned by existence. So last week I introduced this to you, if you hadn't heard this before, the 5 aggregates, the 5 heaps of who we are, these skandhas, that we have this form, we have these feelings, we have these perceptions, we have this consciousness. Excuse me, let me make sure I get this right.
Mental formation.
Mental formations, thank you. I think that's the 5, right? So
Consciousness is the 5th one.
yeah, I said consciousness, but I said it out of order. Yes, you were correct. You were correct. So to repeat it again, if you haven't written this down, you should write this down. These 5 skandhas, the 5 skandhas of our form or our body, our feeling, our perceptions, our mental formations. That was the 4th one, right? And then the 5th one was our consciousness. So these are the 5 skandhas. So, and this becomes who we are. Now we are, before we were becoming a human being, now we are a human being. Now we recognize ourselves as a living being, birth conditioned by existence, that I am here. I am because I am here. If I think, I am. You know, all these poetic ways of expressing this, you know, to be or not to be. But the point is that now I'm here, and I can make a stand. I can take my place among other human beings. I am born, and I continue this, and I can change. I can evolve, or I can remain static. And we see the development stages. And we need to consider the development stages. And when we talk about, you know, the circles that we go around, you know, and how, you know, when we're a child and we go through every year, we go through these cycles and we learn certain things, but maybe we don't learn them. And we just, the next time the circle goes around, here's another opportunity to learn that and to master that. But then maybe we go through the first 10 years of our lives and we don't master some of those childish things. But then when we become a teenager now, we're old in years, but we're not old and we're not wise in experience because we haven't mastered some of the childish things. So we become a childish teenager. And if it's not mastered there, then it goes to our 20-somethings and then our 30-somethings and so on. So we can look at people and we can say, you know, you act like a person who's 20 years old. You act like a person who's 13 years old. Or maybe you act like a person who is beyond your years. Someone, you know, you may be 5 years old or 6 years old, but the way you speak and the things that you say is like someone who is fully mature, someone who's 50, 60 years old. And maybe you meet people like that who have that kind of wisdom. Where does that come from? There's karmic seeds. So then number 12, so this would, number 11, go back. That karma creates the 5 aggregates, the skandhas, that is called birth conditioned by existence. So now, after birth, number 12, after birth, the aggregates, the skandhas, which actually exist, increase. They get richer, they get more pronounced, they get more defined. They ripen and cease. So here, ripen means aging, and then cease means death. That is called aging and death conditioned by birth. Due to ignorance, complete attachment and craving, death causes the inner pain, cause sorrow. I'll repeat that. Due to ignorance, complete attachment and craving, death causes the inner pain, cause sorrow. That sorrow causes expressions in words, cause lamentation. When the 5 consciousnesses experience unhappiness, it is called suffering. Bringing that into mind, that suffering is called mental unhappiness. Furthermore, in this way and so forth, the entire afflictive subconsciousness is called disturbed mind. So this is our state of consciousness, a disturbed mind. This is why we're here now, trying to understand our spirituality, because the physical body and the intellectual body really didn't do anything for our disturbed mind that was lasting, that was stable. Anything it might have done was very temporary. It gave us a nice feeling for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or maybe a day or two, or we go on vacation and we're laying in the sun and seem to have no worries and so on. But it's not stable. It's through our spiritual body that is interconnected with the physical, interconnected with the intellectual, that we have the ability to be able to recognize this interconnectedness of all these things, and then create and maintain the stability in that. And we rely on the spiritual body as much as we rely on the physical body, and as much as we rely on the intellectual body, being a complete human being. So we've used that phrase many, many times. So here we can see it all come together. Without the without the spiritual body, we're just leading life with a disturbed mind. And even with the spiritual body, even with the spiritual mind, the spiritual aspect, there can be disturbances because we're not perfect in that. We're not stable in that. It is being a Buddha, going through all the stages of being a human being, which includes becoming a spiritual practitioner, which includes becoming in spiritual union with the physical and the intellectual, the yogi, yogini, and then becoming the bodhisattva, taking our place in a society that is for the benefit of others, that we're doing for the benefit of others, seeing ourselves in that dynamic, in that social way, and seeing the interaction and helping other beings, and then to be able to perfect that to the point that we become Buddha, that we no longer need the physical body, we no longer need the intellectual body. We become pure spirit, and we're able to stabilize in that. So the Buddha is symbolic of that spiritual body, that connected body. Is this making some sense? Is there can you see something here? Okay, good. Okay, so these are the 12 interdependent links, like a chain, but it's a chain that is holistic, that is all interconnected with each other. So now, continuing to page 227 in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and you see that this is all part of the method, meditative concentration. So my pointing out to you that, this is something that we do during our process of meditation wasn't just something I pulled out of the air or anything like that. Here it is. It's being told to us by the great masters. Maybe we've stumbled onto this awareness ourselves, but here it's being reaffirmed and giving us more confidence in being able to seek this out, to be able to develop this meditative concentration. Hi, Zara is with us. Hi, Zara.
Hi.
Zara, we're talking about the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, the 12 links of interdependent origination. So if you have a copy of the text, we're talking in page 225, 226, 227, and 228. And it's in the chat. I suppose, I don't know if do I have to resend it to you to get it in the chat, or is it there for you already?
Let me look really quick, and I can tell you if it's in the chat for me. It is not in the chat. You'd have to put it back in for me to grab it.
Let me see. How do I do that?
Thank you.
All right. Wait a minute. I did the wrong thing there. Well, let me see if I send it to everyone again. All right, I'm sending to everyone again. So you're on your phone. It wouldn't let me send it to you individually, but I'm screen sharing it as well. All right. So if you'll mute your microphone unless you have something you want to speak about, okay. So now we're on page 227. So we just reviewed the 12 links. So now these 12 links should be understood in three groups. Ignorance, craving, and grasping comprise the afflicting emotions group. Mental formation and existence are the karma group. Consciousness and so forth are the remaining 7 as grouped as suffering. So let's go back to this illustration here. So just a moment, please. Okay, so what this is saying is that number 1, ignorance, number 8, craving, and number 9, clinging. These are the afflicting emotions that we're not aware of what it is. We're ignorant of their power. But we've been enslaved by our craving, by our grasping, and we continue to continue the enslavement. We cling on to it, thinking that this is what we need to be doing, that we're afraid to let go of this because of our ignorance. So these are the afflicting emotions. So the 84,000 afflictive emotions have their root in this ignorance, craving, and clinging. Then the next group was the karma group. And the karma group was the impulses, formations, the habitual tendencies. Right here, number 2. These habitual tendencies and becoming. So the habitual tendencies are coming from a previous existence. This is our karma from previous existence. And this 10, becoming, is what we have been going through these other spheres here that we've been going through to become the birth, number 11, this birth of that. So this becoming this is our potential. All this becomes our potential that is together with these formations, these habitual tendencies, and our potential being actualized to become this. And this is all karma. This is our karma to do things, to react to things, the mode in which we external things or internal thoughts come to us, or external situations, when the conditions are ripe, then this karma spurts out and we take these actions. Remember, karma means action. So the actions are coming from these habitual tendencies and the potential that we have developed as being a human being. So then the next group was all the rest of these. Consciousness, mental and physical, sense objects, contact, sensation. Then we go to birth, and we go to old age and death. All this is suffering. This is the suffering that we go through. This is the suffering that we experience through all that. So again, this is all the disturbed mind. This is the disturbed mind. So if you can look at this in a circle, if we were to go back to this illustration, whoops. Hello. If we look at this illustration, so here are the 12 links that are still in a linear sequence, but in the center is the disturbed mind. So it's another way of looking. This is the disturbed mind. That these are all part of, an expression of. Okay. Any questions so far? Comments?
A quick question, Lance. You said
Sure.
on the karma was just the habitual tendencies and becoming,
Correct.
not birth.
No, because it's a potential.
Hmm.
It's a potential. Remember, becoming was the potential of all the things prior to that. That now we're, all that is all there. Now we're being birthed as a being. So, and we're going through the birth process all the time. We talk about that every time we wake up. Every time we do a meditation, we're being reborn again. So, are we reaffirming all the stuff of our prior life, which was an hour ago, or yesterday, or are we changing, and that we're being reborn now with some new dynamic that's in the mix now that wasn't there before, some new concept, some new change that we invited to come into our midst. That's the birth. That would be the birth. So the birth is seen as a suffering. That's the result of the karma. Does that make sense? Can you follow that logic?
No, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, going back to the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, it says the treatise on the essence of interdependence says the 12 interdependent elements should be understood in 3 groups. The sage, who is the Buddha, described interdependence as afflicting emotions, karma, and suffering. The first, 8th, and 9th comprise the afflicting emotions, the 2nd and 10th comprise karma, and the remaining 7 comprise suffering. So this is coming from the scripture, that which we just took a look at. So now here's a little narrative. This is really good. It says the examples of these are: ignorance is like one who plants the seed. So remember that. Ignorance is one who plants the seed. Karma is like the field in which the seed is planted. And consciousness itself is like the seed. So ignorance is ourself, the one who plants our consciousness into the field of karma, and consciousness is that seed. So we're becoming aware of the karma. We're becoming aware of how it is, why it is that we are who we are. Craving is like moisture. Name and form are like shoots. The others are like branches. So craving is like moisture, is like the nurturing or the nutrients, the water that is coming to supply us with the energy to be able to grow and so on. Name and form are like the shoots. So the seed germinates, and now these shoots begin to shoot out. So these different aspects of that karma, of that seed, of that consciousness now are becoming apparent, the form. And the others are like branches. So all these other things are the branches of those shoots, that seed that now is becoming like this plant or this tree. Leaves and so forth, like branches, leaves, and so forth. So this is a metaphor for how we're growing. So now, if there were no ignorance, ignorance is the one who plants the seed. So if there was no one to plant the seed, if there was no ignorance, if there was no one to plant the seed, then mental formation could not appear. There was no one to plant the seed, mental formation wouldn't come, because that's the next step. Likewise, without birth, aging and death would not happen. So if we weren't born, if that potential did not become birthed, if that potential did not become born, then the suffering of aging and death would not follow. But because there is ignorance, because there is one who plants the seed, mental formations are fully created, and so forth. When there is a birth, aging and death occur. Ignorance does not think. Ignorance does not think. The one who plants the seed is not thinking. It is pure spirit at that point, being driven by karma. Ignorance does not think, I will create mental formation, and mental formation does not think I was created by ignorance. So this spiritual aspect of it is not apparent. It permeates it, but it is not apparent. I was created by ignorance. Likewise, birth does not think, I will create aging and death, and aging and death does not think we were made by birth. But when there is ignorance, when there is one who plants the seed, then mental formations appear and manifest. Likewise, when there is birth, aging and death appear and manifest. Thus, this is interdependence with cause. Interdependence with cause.
That was beautiful.
Gampopa.
That's beautiful, man.
Gampopa.
Right on.
Kenshin made the point over and over and over again that his translation is as close to the literal translation of each and every page, each and every sentence, each and every word of Gampopa And his translation is very precise because he's a very good student of language, but also with him was Kenmo Trinley. And Kenmo Trinley, you all haven't met her, but she's a nun who, an American nun, and she was trained as a lawyer, as an attorney. And she worked for the government. I don't know exactly what she did, but she was very intelligent and very, very good, at being able to form these sentences, or to help Kenshin form these sentences in a way that we, speaking English, could understand this. So them working together with Gampopa, you see, their compassion to do this, I don't know how long this took, but it had to take years for them to develop this book. Their compassion is just without measure. And the compassion of Gampopa to be able to, and the compassion of Milarepa, who requested Gampopa to compose this book, to put this book together. And then all the thousands and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who have come in the past 1,000 years since this book was written, who have followed this and used this book as the basis of their development in Dharma understanding and practice. So it's a fantastic piece of work. And this was the Lam Rim text, a Lam Rim, Lam, L-A-M, and Rim. Lam Rim means stages of the path. Path is the Lam, and Rim is the path. Or stages, excuse me. In Tibetan, the adjectives come after the noun. So this became the first of the Lam Rim text. And each of the other different traditions, each of the other lineages had their own Lam Rim text. So the Nyingma had their Lam Rim text. The Galupa had their Lam Rim text. The Shakya have their Lam Rim text, etc. So this is the Kagyu. So it's so powerful. It's so amazing, and it is so full of wisdom that leads to greater wisdom. It's full of intellectual wisdom that leads to spiritual wisdom. It's guiding us to be able to get between the words, to get between the lines, to experience this. So this is how I've always said that, when we start off, we start off with 15 or 20 minutes, memorizing these prayers and so on, and getting a basis, which is giving us confidence that we can do these things, that we can sit in one place for 15 minutes with our legs crossed on a cushion and do this. And it's preparing ourselves to be able to get to this kind of level with the Jewel Ornament of Liberation and other such teachings, to be able to sit in one place and develop this one-pointed mindfulness, to be able to get into the innermost consciousness, if you will, of this spirituality. So this is where 15 minutes can easily become a half an hour. A half an hour can easily become an hour. An hour can become 2 hours or a whole day. Or you say, my God, I just want to keep reading this. I just want to keep thinking about this. I just want to keep meditating about this. And our meditation becomes a vital part of our lives. It takes on this whole now part of our life, our spirituality. We now become a complete human being. We become the three-pronged stool. All these analogies that we've been using begin to become stabilized. We see why it is, and it becomes exciting. This is the Sambhogagaya. The Sambhogagaya is the subtle enjoyment body, the intellect. This is where we're using the part of the brain that we don't use normally. They say it takes 15% of our brain power to be able to perform our daily jobs and so on like that, our relationships and everything. So here's the other 85% of the brain being activated. And it's part of the heart mind. So this mind, the intellectual mind and the heart mind are in union. Now we're seeing this all come together. So this wisdom now is guiding our karma, is guiding our actions. And this is where we begin to make our changes. To say, oh wow, I wasted so much time. I did those things. I shouldn't have done those things. The suffering that I caused myself and others. And what was temporary happiness? I thought I was doing the right thing. And maybe we need that. It's part of the process. We shouldn't condemn it. And we shouldn't condemn it in ourselves. We shouldn't condemn it in others. It's part of the process. But we're bringing it now onto this path of experience. And we see the myriad ways in which this experience operates. And this is human being, the human condition. So this was the interdependence with cause. So this cause was all this, stuff that we just went through. Now, the inner interdependence supported by conditions. So this gets even more a little vague. So earth, water, fire, wind, space, and consciousness are called the 6 elements. The earth element causes the solidity of the body. The water element causes the body to cohere. The fire element digests whatever you eat, drink, and so forth. The wind element moves the breath out and in. The space element creates the spaces within the body. The consciousness element creates the 5 consciousnesses. The consciousness element creates the 5 consciousnesses and the afflicted mental consciousness. Without these conditions, a body cannot be born, and through the combination of these 6 elements, a body functions fully. These 6 elements do not think, I establish solidity, and so forth. The body does not think, I was created by these 6 conditions. By these 6 conditions, the body arises. So going back just a little bit here, it says the consciousness element creates the 5 consciousnesses and the afflicted mental consciousness. So what are the 5 consciousnesses? What are the 5 consciousnesses? What are we conscious of? We're consciousness of our sight. We're consciousness of what we smell, what we taste, what we hear, what we touch. So these consciousnesses together. So we're thinking very elementary here. So this is part of the mind training. To not let ourselves get so far out ahead of ourselves that we lose track of the basis, of the fundamentals. Else we become arrogant. That's why teaching is so great. And that's why teaching 101 is so great. And that's why it's said and over and over and over again in the King of Samadhi Sutra that I'm studying now. There was the words of the Buddha. Over and over again, it's teaching. Whatever you learn, turn around and teach it. Whatever you know. If you haven't known anything, don't teach it. But if you've come to some kind of an aha moment, well, you can teach that because you know it. But you'll find that by teaching and by allowing yourself a stream of consciousness, which is an expression, it's an expression of freedom. And you'll find that there is greater wisdom within yourself that you've been suppressing by keeping it to yourself through fear that you don't know, lack of confidence. But by reaching out and, maybe not knocking on doors, so to speak, but if you find that a door happens to be open to you, seize the opportunity, not for your own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And by doing that, through that benefit of others, doing for others, then that brings your awareness of your wisdom further to the surface. This is part of the process. So creates the five consciousness and the afflicted mental consciousness. The afflicted mental consciousness. The afflicted mental consciousness are the emotions, is our confused mental states. But we need to be able to experience that and recognize that in order to cure it. This is part of why we are human beings. Being a human being is part of it appears, it appears that being a human being is part of something else. Now, maybe that's delusional. Maybe that's giving more credit to eternalism or something like that, to the extreme of eternalism. And that's something to comprehend. That's something to contemplate. It's something to consider. It's something to experience. Because if I try to explain it in terms that I understand, it may just confuse things more. But it's through this process that we're talking about here that I experienced it and other people experience it, and that the invitation is there for everyone else to experience it. We're doing it in these Dharma terms and so on, but you can do it with other systems. It's not exclusive, but this one is very articulate. It is a function of time and effort. We have to want to do this. We have to develop this. We have to cultivate this. Just like, if we want a garden, we got to go out and we got to work the garden. So if we want to be a complete human being, we have to go through the process of developing the garden of the mind, the garden of the heart, the garden of the heart-mind. Okay, so then furthermore, how many lifetimes does it take to complete these 12 elements of interdependence? The 10 Noble Bhumi Sutra says, ignorance and mental formation are related to the past. Consciousness through feeling occur in the present. Craving and so forth through existence are related to the future. then the cycle continues. So if we go back to this, so here, previous existence, the past, present existence, now, the fruits of our present existence here, and future existence is here. So we see this progression in this linear way. But remember that this is a whole on. This is all interconnected because we've had many previous existences. We've had many present existences. We've had many fruits of present and we have much future existence. The interdependence of nirvana is in reverse order. When one realizes all phenomena as the nature of pervading emptiness, then ignorance ceases. When that ceases, everything respectively ceases until aging and death. So, when we realize that phenomenal nature is the display of truth, of the truth body. If we look at it in terms of the kayas, the Dharmakaya is the truth body. It's non-conceptual, inexpressible. However, it's radiant, it's luminous. And that display of its luminosity, of its radiance, is this intellectual mind and the physical body that is at its highest perfection is the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. They are both relative to each other and relative to the relative to the Dharmakaya, to the truth body. They are part of the truth body. The truth body is everything, if I can use that word. It's a conceptual world, but it's inexpressible. But it displays itself as the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya. So the physical body of the Buddha, the physical body of the Dharmakaya, and the intellect of the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, you see. So all phenomena as the nature of pervading emptiness. So there's pervading emptiness. The pervading emptiness is the Dharmakaya, is the essence of the pervading emptiness is the Dharmakaya. Then ignorance ceases. When that ceases, everything respectively ceases until aging and death. When ignorance ceases, then mental formations cease, and so forth. When birth ceases, then aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, suffering, mental unhappiness, and distress all cease. Thus, the vast aggregate of suffering ceases. So what's the vast aggregate of suffering? Our body. Samsara. All this. Does this lead to other dimensions? Isn't that conceptual too? But we can recognize the suffering. We can recognize the unhappiness. We can recognize the happiness, and we can recognize the joy. For each of us, it's a choice. So even if it's just now, forget about tomorrow. Forget about yesterday. If it's just for now, what do you want now to become? So what do you think of that?
So there is no suffering. There is no cause of suffering, but there is no ending of suffering.
Yeah. It's just our mind doing its thing.
Well, there maybe is, but it is created by our mind.
Well, that's correct. That's correct.
It doesn't exist in itself. It depends on the mind working for us.
Correct.
When I heard about this process of dependent origination, first time it was quite confusing to me because maybe I didn't quite get the terminology right, what is meant by certain words. And of course, when I get it first, it was translated into Russian from Japanese maybe or something like that. But the more I hear it in different languages with different perspective, the better it makes sense to me.
Yes.
You know, as a clear process.
Yes.
Yeah, the Gampopa, or Kenshin did a wonderful job of interpreting, or
Translating.
translating this beautifully. Because, like I said, I've heard this many times in Mahayana, in Korean Mahayana, but the way it was, like you said, the help that he got from the nun, she really,
Tenmo.
she did a wonderful job of making it very understandable, even for me, as as dense and stupid as I am. But really wonderful job, really wonderful job, and when you were doing the 12 interdependent origination, going from one to I guess 12, and you were explaining the sense organs and the jobs of the organs itself, and the feelings of joy, suffering, and indifference. That's when it came to me. That's where the 108 comes from. The beads that we count on our hands, the number 108, the 108 afflictions caused by our sense organs, our 6 sense organs, and what they actually, the contact conditioned by the 6 increasing feels, that's 12. And then by the feelings of joy, suffering, and indifference, that's 36. And by past, present, and future, it makes 108.
Well, that's very astute. I didn't. I hadn't noticed that.
Like I said, I think it's the first time you actually used the jewel ornament. I mean, literally in this way, because you've done this teaching before a few times, but this was most excellent. Thank you so much, Lance.
Well, you're welcome. I hope that it becomes clearer as you experience it more. You take everyone takes the advice, and to me, it's the most difficult thing. This is the most difficult teaching. Because it's so subtle. But it's the teaching that gets me high.
You're talking about the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, teaching that, or
well, there's still, several other ways in which this has been taught that I use, and it just I'm in that mind stream, when I'm in that I get high. I just get a buzz that is the same as if I meditated for 3 or 4 days, or it's beyond any drug that I know. Not that I've done all the drugs in the world, but it's beyond that, and the difference is that I'm in control. When we take drugs, they're in control. They may give us a buzz, but the buzz is really not ours. It's the drug, and there's a difference there. So whether it was pot or mushrooms, psychedelics, whatever, downers, uppers, alcohol, all those things, none of them compares to one-pointed mindfulness when you are in control. Well, unless you guys have something you want to talk about, this is it for tonight. I'll be happy to talk more, but I don't know what more I can say right now.
Are we?
Yeah, this is
Are we-
great, and I like that you explained that all these 12 stages or steps, they don't really follow one another. They may, but usually they kind of overlap and exist on top of each other. So we may be in different stages of confusion or different stages of enlightenment at the same time. Yeah, and another thing I want just to point out, it's just curious to me that the people in Asian were very observant, and they did observe that things come out of seemingly nothingness, like of moisture and air, right? So, and now we know that it's come like some things come from invisible spores, right? We can call them seeds, we can call them spores, but I think there is, if you think about it, there is a lot of wisdom and observation of life in all these teachings.
Sure, that's right. Yeah, many of the Theta yoga practices, the visualization all starts out, with Om Sabhava Sutta Sarva Dharma Sabhava Sutta Ham, from the emptiness, from this space comes all this. And all this is within that emptiness, so it's, yes.
And another thing I want to mention is, now that I'm like a little more into neurobiology and all that, and sometimes you hear about like development studies, how nervous system develop and all that, and we know that like while still in the womb, we have hearing, sense, sense of light, sense of touch, all already being developed in the womb. So we like exercising those senses still there. And yeah, and there is, and another thing, that there is like a lot of spontaneous activity that happens at that time. So like some seemingly coming out of nothing, but what you can think, perhaps project that the consciousness has already start playing with matter based on its propensity long before we actually born, and creates these conditions to how we arise, how we about. There were already been a lot of conditions and process laying out and at work before we see the day of light, the light of the day. Sorry.
Yes, no, you're right. And those thoughts, what you just said are very provocative because they lead in many different directions, about life and the sacredness of life and who gives life and who takes life away, etc. It's a very provocative sequence of thoughts that go along with what you just said.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay in very general uh, terms, but what you said is we do have this power of being who we are now, or creating something more out of ourselves, or deconstructing who we are. So like this power of creation and destruction are within us once we realize that. The
Yes.
power of development, the power of realization, or the power of getting ourselves into more confusion.
Yes.
I guess it's always also with us.
Yes. And to remain in that freedom, to be able to do that,
Right.
to stabilize that freedom.
Right. Hopefully we learn to stabilize it. Not always that works. Yeah.
Say that again, please.
I'm saying hopefully we'll learn how to stabilize it.
We know how
As
to
you said.
stabilize it.
Well, I think we sometimes know, but we still, a lot of us are still learning how actually. Yeah.
Well, right. Yes.
I mean, that's why we're here with you. I hope.
And that's the practice. That's the practice. I mean, here we're discussing intellectually this, but we're not necessarily experiencing that freedom. And that's where the practice comes in, and to be able to take this apart, put it back together again in a meditative way. And actually, and let me put this in perspective now, that what this chapter is in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, this is chapter 17 of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which is the elucidation of the paramita of meditative concentration. No, excuse me, chapter 16. Chapter 16. So we were looking at ignorance, through meditative concentration. So that this was an example of meditative concentration being applied. Which is all part of, this is the method of action bodhicitta. This book is remarkable. This book is unbelievable. This book is incredible. Just reading the titles of the chapters will blow your mind. So it's complete. All right. Zara, I know you came in a little bit late, but do you have any comment or question?
Hey Lance, I did. Wow, I was just absorbing and digesting. And I'm in agreement with Tom. Tom made a couple of remarks to you about your synthesis of this was eloquent, and I'm going to be reflecting on this the rest of the evening. How you've described this to us, the interconnectedness of so much. I literally was blown away. I'm in awe right now. That's why I've been really silent. I'm like, wow, like everything you said just hit, like it was like what's it called in baseball, like a home run for me. I had multiple light bulbs tonight in listening to you and really being present to each word and how you contextualized it into like a layperson's description. So wow, tonight was transformative for me. Thank you. It really was. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad, and I'd like to talk to you about it next year and see how you feel about it next year, how it grows
Yeah.
within all of us. How that circle,
So good.
keeps going around. And
Yeah. Lance, I've done this cycle now with you a few times, like maybe 4 or 5 times, but it's interesting. My understanding and the wisdom, well, the knowledge and then the wisdom separately, it's dynamic and it continues to evolve. Every time I hear you, go through some of these basic primer things, it's fascinating to me how like what the brain hears and then those light bulb connections. It's like I could keep doing this with you indefinitely and still continue to learn so much. So it's nice. It's a compliment to you. Thank you.
well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, brothers and sisters, thank you very much, and I'm more than happy to talk more if you have something, but I've run out of things to say on this topic tonight, so and I have to think about what we're going to do next. If anybody has something that you want to talk about next, we'll do that. Right now, it was enough to get to bring this out in the open, so to speak. So I think we need to get into some meditation. I think that's next time we're going to talk more. We're going to go back to the stages of meditation, and we're going to review the stages of meditation. I think that's important to do now. So I think that's where we'll start next time. All right. Well, thank you. And Tom, will you do the dedication prayers, please?
Sure. Should you want me to do all of them, or you may just do the dedication prayer by Lord Jitkan Sungpan?
Whatever you prefer.
Sure. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, by the innate root of virtue, may I and all beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikungpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana, and the innate root of virtue, now result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth of the Shravatka or Pachika Buddha. May all other sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachments to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta. And through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death. or in the bardos. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones and for the benefit of all beings. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all. See you all soon. Next, not this weekend, but the weekend following is going to be the Bumsuck. And if you all can join us for that, would be wonderful. And the week after that is going to be the Medicine Buddha empowerment and sand mandala and practices and so on. So if you can join us for that, would be wonderful. And for anyone who hasn't taken refuge and would like to take refuge, would be a good opportunity to request refuge from Kempo Samdup on the weekend when we do the Bum Sok. Would be very, very good. So I encourage you to do that.
Thank you,
Okay.
Max.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Brother Lance.
Good night, brother.